Hello again, everybody. This is Steve, coming to you with another intro to writing video. This one is on book series and types. I'm hoping this one's going to be fairly quick. Yeah, I know, me, right? Anyhow, what I'm covering here is not like, prequels and genres and stuff like that. This is just basically the repetition and length of book series. The various types that come about, and that's what I'm going to generally keep this limited to, because I could go into so many things, like prequels and fantasy, sci-fi, troll fiction, starship fiction, things like that. But like I say, this one just covers more the case of how many books in a series. Is it a series? Is it something else? So anyways, the basic types here start with what I would consider the smallest, because you can have a standalone book like I have in point number 2, standalone novel, but the first type I want to cover is an anthology. Anthologies are basically just individual short stories that in and of themselves are too small to justify being called an actual novel. They don't even really function they're not even big enough really to qualify for a novelette. Novelette, if I remember correctly, is 20,000 words or less, and a short story is going to tend to be like 5,000 to 6,000. Let me correct that. Short stories are less than 20,000. Novelette is 20 to 40,000. Anything above 40,000 is a novel. Sorry, it's morning brain. I got that backwards. Anyways, so what a lot of authors will tend to do when they're writing short stories, since they're not in the 20 to 40,000 word category or higher to qualify to be a standalone novel. Sorry about that. Since they're not in there, since they're not in that range of 20,000 words or more, they will often put them into an anthology. I've got an anthology. Matter of fact, I've got 3 of them. 2 are out of print. 1 is in print. Each one is 12 short stories. They range about 5,000 to 7,000 words, and they play out essentially like a single scene that I have in one of my regular novels. So they're kind of like a little snapshot of what you would have in a full-size regular novel. Now, if you're running with a novelette, 20 to 40,000 words, those you could create an anthology of novelettes. Take, like I say, each one's 25,000 words. 4 of those is 100,000 words. That's a full-size novel. So you could take 3-4 novelettes, pack them into the same book, create an anthology of novelettes. The next one, which is something I was already mentioning, is standalone novel. That's generally going to be either a novelette of 20 to 40,000 words or a full-size novel, which is anything over 40,000 words. That's going to be anything where it's a single story, it stands on its own, it's not connected to anything else. The story begins in the book, ends in the book, it doesn't carry over into other books. It's all its own thing. That one is a popular one because there's a lot of people that write just standalone stories, standalone books. It can be a technical book, it can be a fantasy, a sci-fi book, historical, fiction, etc. like that. But basically it's the one book and no more. Now that doesn't mean it can't be in a larger universe. You take a look at with my Earthfleet universe. You have the original 4-book saga, and then you have the extended universe, and the extended universe is not actually a series. It's a series, but not a series. In other words, it's a group of standalone books that are part of the wider Earthfleet universe. the extended universe books ended up kind of coming about because I made a goof when I first started out, and I called that first series the Earthfleet Saga. So now I have to do Earthfleet Extended Universe for the other books that are all standalone, because I goofed up my series in the original, and at this point in time it's too late to rename it because everybody knows it as Earthfleet Saga. So why rename it to something else? It really should have been something like the Soul Saga or the Crassian Crusade or Crassian Crusade or something, some other name than Earthfleet Saga, because then that just kind of screws everybody up. So that was my fault on that one. But again, that was part of the learning experience. You're going to make those kind of mistakes, so don't be afraid if you do that. It's part of the learning and growing experience as an author. Anyhow, and moving on to point 3, series. There are basically 2 types of book series that you can do. And I'm not talking prequel or flashback or anything like that. I'm talking there's, that the series itself is made up of 2 different ways of telling the story. You're either going to have episodic, which is like what the Earthfleet Saga is. It's individual stories that stand on their own. If you pulled them out of the series, and you set them aside by themselves, they could stand on their own. And what they're going to do is they're going to have 2 basic levels to them. You're going to have the larger underlying story, which may or may not be present in that novel. And then you're going to have the actual events of the novel. That what happens in that novel stays in that novel, basically. Like with Destiny's Mission. The underlying story was that the Crassians were trying to destabilize the galaxy so that they could create war and then eventually take over. That was the underlying story. The book itself was about a trip to Cebius, where Earth and her allies were trying to create peace. The Crassians and their allies were trying to create war, and there's all of this struggle going back and forth. So, like I say, that was a standalone story. Once, like with Ort Perimeter, Destiny's Mission, Homeworld, you took care of one particular item. Like in Homeworld, it was Black Orchid. In Empire Rising, you finally got in there and got to take care of the Crassians, get rid of them once and for all. Which, by the way, is a little teaser. They may be back. I haven't decided yet. I found a way to bring them back and make it fit with the series, be believable, and tie into everything. And just, do it in a way that it's not clunky, basically. But those books, individual books, were all episodic. They were one episode with an underlying story and a primary story that was on top. Then you have what's called a super series. That is a name. Not everybody uses that name. I use it because I think it really does well to describe what it is. A super series is a series of books that it's all one story, but it's broken up across multiple books. To compare the two, if you want something out in the wider reading audience, like the Narnia books, those are episodic. There's an underlying main story, and then there's the primary story that's on top. Those books were all episodic. Ender's Game could be considered a standalone book. It ties into a larger universe, but it's a book that stands all on its own. The Shadow series was a super series. There are episodic elements to it. Excuse me a second. There you go. Got kind of stuffed up this morning. Anyways, there's episodic elements to it, but primarily it's one great big overarching super series. 4 books. Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings is kind of a funny one, though. Lord of the Rings was originally written as one book, but it was so big that the publisher split it into 3 different novels. And I actually think that was good because I think the end result was a lot better to break it into 3 books than it was just to leave it as one great big book. Of course, if Tolkien had been a little bit more conservative with his descriptions, it probably could have stayed as one book. But There are books, though, which are like Lord of the Rings, and they're one book and they're really long. War and Peace is a great example of that. Those books are classified as epics, not so much for what the story is, but more for what the length of the story is. Epics are going to be stories that are over 200,000 words, basically. Some say 150,000. I disagree. I just consider those an extra long novel, because my novels average about 100, 110, 120,000 words. You get up over 150,000 words, I still consider it a novel, even though it's a large one. You get over 200,000, now you're in epic territory. Those are the ones that are really, really friggin' big. I don't know what the largest in history would be. If Lord of the Rings had stayed as one novel, then that would have been probably one of the longer ones at 450,000. Like if you had taking a look at one of my own series, the Offworld Chronicles, if I had left that as all one book, that would have been about 750,000 words for that entire book. So that one would have been considered an epic. It also probably would have given you a hernia carrying it to the coffee table. So, but those are the basic lengths and the basic types. Now, series naming, going back to that again. Series namings, there's two basic ways to do this. It depends on your preference. It may depend on your publisher if you end up professionally publishing it, because the publisher is going to dictate to you a lot of things. That's why I went with a publisher for a while. It was fun. I learned things, but ultimately I decided I'm just going to do it on my own, because it gives me more flexibility, because the publishers, they've got profit margins they've got to worry about. You're just in it for fun, hopefully anyways. If you're in it for profit margins, go with the publisher, because they're going to be your type of person to go with. But like I say, when it comes to series naming, there's kind of two schools of thought on that. The first one says, hey, let's name this series after the first book. And that happens a lot too, not where you're naming it intentionally that way, but it's a case of the series really it's a series, but you haven't named it. So in the essence of simplicity and paperwork and all of that kind of stuff, they will name it after the first book in the series. Like, if I had named the Earthfleet Saga, the first book in that series would have been the Ort Perimeter. So, it was the Ort Perimeter, therefore it would have been the Ort Perimeter series. Like, for example, when I started Planetfall, the Planetfall series, the first book in that series was Planetfall. So that would have been, if I hadn't given, if it had actually gone anywhere and I hadn't given it a series name, then the series would have been the Planetfall series. The other school of thought is to actually take the effort and give your series a name. Like with Earthfleet Saga, I gave, that one was called that one got its name, even though none of the books in the series were titled Earthfleet Saga. It was about Earthfleet, and it was a saga, but that was kind of a mistake that I made early on, that I should have named it something different. Also, looking back at it, really it could have fit into the just the whole Earthfleet extended universe type situation, where it was just a series of standalone novels and you had different, underlying stories. Maybe you needed it to be a series, maybe you didn't. Again, that was something I learned early on by making the mistakes. So don't be afraid if you make mistakes. You learn from them. You grow. It's a part of the learning process. Like you have Orson Scott Card and the Shadow series. He actually names that series the Shadow series. For me, it was like the back that up. I had Earthfleet Saga. I had Offworld Chronicles, Land of the Lions. So there, like I say, there's the two basic schools of thought that you can work with for how to name your series. And another one that you can look at too is, this is more a story type than a series type, but I still kind of toss it under the series because it's connected, it's connected to book series. And that is companion series and novels. These are like, you have your main series, and then you kind of have bolt-on books. Before I get into that too much, I want to back up because I just realized I forgot something when it comes to the series length. When you have a series is going to be anything that's more than one book. I don't remember the name off the top of my head for what it is for a 2-book series, but you can have a series as short as 2 books. The typical series starts at 3 books because you're going to have a trilogy, a quadrology. But and you could have like a 5-book series, a pentalogy, 6-book series, hextology. But generally, once you get past 4 books, it's just called a series or a super series. They kind of stop with all of the fancy I think Greek names and stuff like hex and penta and all that stuff, and it just becomes a super series. So anyways, I wanted to cover that, and I'll go back to what I was doing with the companion series. Companion series or novels are essentially either a different series, at least 2 books, probably 3, or they could be just a standalone novel. That what they are is they're separate from the original series, but they're complementary. Now, they also can be antithetical, meaning that they are contrary to the original series. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean something bad. Let's just say your original series is about Prince Charming and his fight against the dragons and freeing his kingdom from the tyranny of the Dark Wizard and stuff. An antithetical series would be one that takes things from the perspective of my cat adding commentary. Not from the perspective of the cat, but from the perspective of, say, the dragon that with the hero, the Prince Charming, was fighting, or maybe from the quote-unquote Dark Wizard, and you find out that the dragon is just out there trying to make a living, and actually the hero, Prince Charming, is a complete douchewad, and he's out there terrorizing dragons who are just trying to raise their family and live. That's antithetical to what the theme of the original book series was. Same thing with the Dark Wizard. Maybe he's not a Dark Wizard. Maybe he's just an old man who knows magic and is trying to protect his kids and his grandkids. And Prince Charming's over there trying to ruin their day and trash their village and destroy them and all that kind of stuff. So, that is essentially an antithetical. Basically, it's a series that stands in opposition to the story that was told in the original series. So, man. Oh, I love morning sinus problems. Anyways, that is the basic types of book series and series types. The way you can build them. That's a good example. Let me run this one before I close this up. If you want an example of a companion series, the Shadow series was a companion series to Ender's Game. For me, After Offworld is a companion series to the Offworld Chronicles. You have the original Offworld Chronicles, and then you have the After Offworld companion series that kind of ties up all the loose ends that couldn't be done in the original series. So, anyways, that being said, I think I've covered everything. If I forgot something, put it in the comments. I can pick it up on a different video, and we can cover that too. But anyways, like I said, that's the basic book series and types. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, etc., please let me know. Thanks.